Yeah, amazing. Thank you, James. And likewise, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting us and having us on as well. It's yeah, it's great to kind of like, reach out and chat to new people as well. And hopefully people will see this and get a little bit inspired as well. So the talk today is going to be I'm going to jump around quite a lot and I suppose talk a lot more about maybe like our process and things behind the work as well, rather than just showing I guess some of the films. So maybe I can just start with a little bit of an intro about myself. My name's Stephen. I'm creative director at Art&Graft. I've been with the studio for I think it's around like 12 years now. So I've been here a long time and joined as a junior designer and animator, and slowly kind of made my way up through the ranks, learning a lot and broadening my skills as I went. I started very much focused in like design and illustration and character animation, and I've since, I've come here and learned about graphic design and 3D design and live action and really like felt that I've like broadened my skills out of that and seen a lot I feel like I've seen a lot in that time and seen a lot of change in that time. The studio's been going for around like 14 years and where we started is very different to where we are now. We recently rebranded as we just sort of spoke about, and this was our old logo before. And we obviously, love it. It's very easy to get like sentimental about these things, but it doesn't reflect kind of where we are in the industry. It doesn't reflect the changes that we've seen in the industry or reflect kind of how we work and who we work with as well. We needed an identity that could match that and could also like work beautifully. Over the course of the rebrand, we thought a lot about how we communicate. It's something that we do for others a lot, and it was really fascinating to like turn that view on ourselves and think about, I suppose, kind of deep questions about who we are, who even are we, and how do we like express that to everybody else. Learn a lot as part of that, and I suppose fully overhauled our entire identity, visual identity anyway, at least how we express our identity. So yeah, that's the logo, the colors, the type, the motion, even the language and copy, which is kind of a new thing for us. It's not really something that we've really drilled into. And thinking about how we describe ourselves formed a lot of the conversations. And I suppose trying to get to a point where we could find what that top line is. How do you boil your whole practice, your whole process down into like one single line? And yeah, if you guys will kind of excuse me with this anyway, I'd just like to spend a moment just to go a little bit like GCSE English and kind of break down a few of this, because almost every word in here we've like agonized over to get to this point. So obviously Art&Graft is in there fairly obviously. It wasn't too difficult a conversation to get to that point. But I suppose what I can say about this is the ethos that it reflects, and that it's not just enough to make something beautiful. We work hard to make something that's meaningful. We're more than just a design and animation studio and company now as well. And we look into the future, and we needed a wider description, a broader description, that we're a creative studio team that can make anything. Who we work with has changed a lot as well. We're now working a lot more directly with brands, like closer to the people making decisions, and we feel like our work's like better because of that as well. We're motion specialists. Yes, we can design. We love design. It's brilliant, but motion is where we like really feel that we add value. And then just the final point here around reflecting the ethos of the name. Ultimately, that this mentality that it's not enough just to make pretty pictures. It needs to be right for that project and right for that brief and unique for that client, because no two briefs are the same, are they? So why should any two projects kind of be the same? So yeah, thank you. That's the analysis kind of concluded on that. But I suppose a better way to understand like what we're up to as well and what we're doing is to show you like what that looks like. So here's a showreel of basically the last 14 years condensed into a minute. Nice one. So yeah, this is, yeah, as I say, that's that sort of 14 years and gives a good overview, hopefully, of everything we do and the work that we make. I should also give a huge shout out to a Coic Audio who did the track for that, and it sort of, there was a soundtrack of our rebrand, which was amazing. So yeah, huge shout out to those guys and thank you. And as I mentioned at the top, just want to use this talk to drill in a little bit more to what goes on behind the project and the process, and I guess take a look at the team as well. When we approach projects, we come at them from a sense of getting as many minds as possible on a brief. It's the work we do is not the vision of a single mind. It's everybody coming together and ideas coming from everybody and combining those skills in different ways to make something that works for that particular project. Everyone in the team has got like their own specialism, but also like a generalist interest as well, and a willingness to sort of get stuck in and do anything and learn and develop. And when you combine those people, when you combine those skills, that's when you like get magic. So for example, if you take Freddie and when he works in a team with Jack, you get Proto, which was a Miyazaki-inspired look at the future of sustainable fashion. But then when Jack works with Jen and Morgan, you get this piece for Virgin Media, a visual metaphor explaining the transition from copper wires to fiber ones. While that's going on, in another corner of the studio, you might have Ezgi, who's working with myself, developing a visual language of grids and gradients for Google DeepMind, while Felix works with Jake to develop this 3D house asset for Amazon Ring, showcasing the connectivity of products all around the home. But then when Felix works with Jack instead, you get this charming character animation piece, which was a little blue robot helping Sky customers in Germany. And every new project works in this way, this like different combination of skills, different configuration of everyone working together, because we never set out to make the same project twice. We're always finding answers as we go with these chemistry experiments and seeing where that leads us, whether that's to the quantum frontier where we developed a visual language using 2D paintings, AI style transfer, and some 3D texture mapping as well. We've also been, we directed this live performance of virtual band We Are OFK for Game Awards as well, or whether that's this like European channel rebrand for Boeing. There we go. So yeah, and with this system, we created like essentially like an infinitely expandable toolkit. So every ident, every bumper, every lower third could be updated and refreshed as we went along, using these different stickers, and it essentially allows the channel to like live on and develop like long after we've finished working on it as well and grow with its audience. Character's a huge thing for us as well. We really enjoy bringing character to things like this piece for Visco, where we brought character to essentially like a UI slider and created these narratives, these stories around that. We dabble in live action occasionally as well, which is so much fun, so different to the animation process, but we approach things in the same way. Ultimately, because of the team and because of the way in which we work and the way that those skills mesh together, we can go anywhere. Both the production and the creative teams mixing together, it's the people like influencing the work to make the best projects, we think. We're also really excited about developing people's skills like outside of creativity as well. So whether that's building like a slightly like a more wide-ranging career where you're focused on not just one subject or technique, learning how to communicate, learning how to express ideas is essential, certainly for like longevity in your career as well. And working in a team is a huge part of it. You can do obviously so much more as a team than you can as an individual. And then in terms of people's development, we try and give everybody opportunities to do that and to grow. And everyone in the team gets a chance to lead projects, whether that's whether they're a junior or a senior, and just giving them opportunities to do that and get stuck in and learn how to do these things. also take our responsibility for the next generation quite seriously and important to sort of see ourselves in that wide context and the responsibility that we have. So we run a work experience program with local schools. We're mentoring and doing portfolio reviews with kind of universities in town as well and all over, and also run an internship scheme as well, which I would be remiss to say is open for applications at the moment. Kind of the summer one's closing end of March, and then end of May closing applications for the sort of fall. But there's loads of info on the website to check that out, because we're really excited about connecting with people and connecting and creating a sense of community as well. It's a bit hard to do that remotely. It's a bit hard to do that from working, in bedrooms, and like, where are people gonna learn? You need a space for them to be, and a space to be able to do that. Which brings me on to talking about the studio. We recently moved. We were in Shoreditch and since moved to Bankside, which has been a complete tonal shift, completely different part of town. It's been amazing to sort of see the differences between the places, and certainly the studio has been a really long time coming. It's been a lot of work to get to this point, and what's been so exciting is creating a space that works for people and can amplify their creativity, and think about how we use each space of the studio. So you guys should definitely come around and visit. It'd be great to have you as well. But in the meantime, I just thought it'd be worth giving you a little tour of some of the key spots in the space. So first stop on the tour is the studio. Everyone's working up here, open plan to be able to ask questions, overhear conversations, see what's going on. All the different skills and teams sit together in this one space and work here. Then if we toddle onto the end of the room and down the stairs there, we get to these sort of smaller breakout rooms where you can have little project reviews, kind of catch-ups about things away from your desk. Also just quite a good place to sit and read a book over lunchtime as well. If you don't want to sit in a booth, there's also the kitchen space, which is obviously the heart of any home, heart of any building. And really with this space, it's an opportunity to talk about anything, everything, and nothing really. Whether that's a good series or film that you might have seen, or just debating what the best flavor crisps are, it all happens in this space. And then the final stop on our tour is the workshop, which is where I'm sitting in at the moment. This multi-purpose space, and a space we're really excited about. Set up in the format you can see in the picture here. It's ready for a client meeting. That's why we've got the flowers out. But it's also a space for our weekly Spark session catch-ups, which is where we develop our internal studio projects, and I'll talk a bit more about those in a second as well. We also just launched our own talk series. It's obviously nothing on Talking Thursdays, but I think what we're trying to do with this, a bit like I'm sure you guys set out to do as well, is it just be inspired by lots of different spaces and other areas and other industries as well, and really try and broaden our horizons. The first event we hosted with director Effie Papa and digital fashion artist Steffi Fung as well, and it was fascinating just to hear. They're obviously really contrasted work, but really fascinating to hear what they do. And future events, we're excited about looking into architecture and music and fine art and product design, and pull from all these different areas into what we do in our process, and really use this space in a way that, as I mentioned at the top, just amplifies creativity. Because there's been a lot of change, whether people are working fully in studios or remotely. There's pros and cons to both those things, but we just wanted to make a space where people want to come to work and want to feel inspired as well, and a space that allows for that interaction and that development as well. Because there has been a lot of change in the industry. We've certainly noticed it. The way in which people are working with us is now different. We're working less with agencies and now more directly with brands. We've switched from being facilitators to being problem solvers, which is really exciting. It used to be that we would get given some references and a script, and our kind of first approach of this would be to go off and explore and pull at that brief and test it and try out different things and iterate. And rather than just replicating the references we were given, we want to find something that's right for that unique problem. But quite a lot of the time in that older system, the response to this would have been, thank you, but no, please kind of like go in this direction, go this way. And that's cool. We've made like some of our favorite projects that way. Like this piece for Team USA was so much fun to work on, and looks beautiful. And there's obviously some development as we go through it, but it was very much like on rails from the beginning, really. Same for this 3D character animation piece for Smarty as well. This was one of the big like first sort of character animation acting projects that we worked on, and we learned like so much about that in the process. But in that process, I suppose the client was somebody that we heard about rather than somebody that we actually got to speak to. And now it's like quite different. As I said, with our top line, the majority of our work now comes through brands. We're consistently working with people like Apple and Meta, Google, Verizon, Amazon as well, and building real partnerships, because working consistently together means that you get to know each other and you build a sense of trust, you build a sense of like understanding. We learn about them as they kind of learn about us as well, and you can explore together, and we're able to do that. We're able to iterate and come up with options and provide different routes and find things that maybe that offer some fresh eyes, I suppose, stretch briefs and pull them in different directions. Like some of this work we've done for Amazon Ring, this is all like development work. A lot of this stuff never moves beyond the point of this style frame, and we sort of think it's okay to get these things wrong, as we see it as our job to stretch the brief and then adapt with feedback. So the more we learn and with the feedback we get, we then develop from that, and the work becomes stronger because of how that process works ultimately. It's important to say, I suppose, that we do still work in both ways, of course, and happy to. But it feels like brands get more from us when we are in those like partnerships. We have this versatility and variety in the studio, and we can come in earlier in the process and tackle any brief and any problem as well. But I suppose it's not just like the way in which we're working has changed. It's also what the sort of projects look like. It used to be that you would just work on perhaps like a 16:9 spot, and that would be it. You'd kind of deliver it and then job done. But now it's about creating things in multiple ratios and multiple screens, and considering how things work in all those different spaces. And also with this particular project for WhatsApp, it was about multiple languages as well, and finding a smart way to do that. How do you work in a way that doesn't like end up killing the whole team? It's important to build like smart systems and think about these things from the start, really consider composition and have a plan of how the ratios are going to fit together. So yeah, for this WhatsApp project from the beginning, we were thinking about, even in storyboards, we were working in this format because we knew the different ratios that it was going to be, and planning those things ahead and building these systems. And we found more and more in some of our latest projects as well, that creating these toolkits, creating systems and project files ultimately that we can then hand over at the end of a project. And it means that the project has a lifespan beyond our delivery, and it means that our partners are getting so much more out of these things, because we're setting them up to be able to update content and switch things in and evolve with their needs as well. And who knows where that's going to go next, which is obviously really exciting to think about. I think one thing that won't change though is having creativity at the heart of all this, and this sense of observation, analysis, and connection that like defies all reason and logic. This like inner pursuit of magic that I'm sure we all feel, that will never change and will always be a part of our work. It's a reason why we have this variety, and it's because we're curious and we like to go in different directions and think, how the hell are we going to make this? How are we going to do this? And I think our approach is set up in a way that allows us to go in any direction that a brief needs us to. So to use a few examples that are at completely different ends of the spectrum time-wise, taking everybody back to 2013, when we were working on this piece for Virgin Atlantic. It was their in-flight safety film. I think they're still running after about 10 years, which is awesome. It's like one of the best new business pieces we've ever done. Like our names are the studio's names are at the end of it, which is amazing. But the project itself was a huge undertaking for a studio like ourselves at that time. And when we were pitching, we were up against some pretty big dogs in the industry. And what we always try and do with these projects is come and find the central truth at the heart of it. And with this one for the safety film, it was ultimately that nobody watches safety films, nobody cares, and finding that truth at the heart of it was what ultimately like won the project for us and made it so powerful. Finding that, yeah, you know, in this case, quite brutal truth, I suppose. And then once we've got that core concept, it's about layering in the iteration, layering in the exploration to find something new. And we must have explored countless narratives, countless different story ideas, trying to find the flow of this thing and trying to find a pathway that worked. And through that exploration, you find something that works and fits that project. Fast forwarding from there back to 2022 now, and a completely different project for a completely different client. This one for Verizon, different technique, different direction, but still the same process at the heart of it, finding that core truth. And for this one, it was ideas around discovery, progression, and connection. This piece was intended to be shown at the Mobile World Congress in Vegas. And there's a whole kind of package of deliverables. There's a sort of full intro film and then title screens and lots of other bits that were to accompany a keynote by Verizon there. And so once we landed on this concept, it was about then exploring and seeing the way into this. Oh, sorry, there we go. Seeing a way into this. And as with the Virgin Atlantic film, it's about testing these things out, and obviously completely different process, but pull it in different directions, see where this story can go. And ultimately everything hinges on that central idea. It all comes back to that core truth that we decided. And despite all the different finishes, despite all the different techniques, we see these projects in the same way, and we approach every project with this same process when we can. This concept-led approach underpins everything. From here, I want to switch a little bit from commercial work to studio projects and talk a little bit about that side of things as well. Like investing in studio projects is something that's like always been part of the studio's DNA. Like from the very beginning, these were some early they were called Art&Graft intros, short 10-second pieces that we sent out as new business pieces to try and drum up a bit of interest. But it were things outside of the commercial work which we kind of invested in and worked on to develop. And over time, this grew and evolved into longer spots, what we called the studio films. This piece, Gizmosis, was actually started life as a pitch for BMW that unfortunately didn't make it, but we picked it up and developed it into a longer form piece and used it as an opportunity to learn and develop our skills and show what we could do. We continued to do that and invest in ourselves, like developing these projects in between commercial work. This one, The Walk, for example, was a really great driver for new business because ultimately it led on to commercial work. Somebody saw this piece and asked us to make essentially a short film about an ant that goes surfboarding, which was so much fun. But it had come off the back of making those studio projects and somebody seeing it and being inspired by that, seeing a kind of spark in it. And there are obviously benefits like outside of the new business thing as well. It's a chance for team members to like learn new skills and develop what they're up to. This one back from 2015 was a chance to like a new form of sort of storytelling and a new look in cinema 4D that we hadn't tried yet. So it was a space for that. Or yeah, new render engines when they were coming out, or when we were kind of discovering them anyway, we would use these studio projects as a chance to explore that new technology, and even got the opportunity to mess around with a motion capture suit as well in the car park of our old studio, which was, yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, it was too silly and quite a lot of fun as well. And we made a studio film out of this. Since then, those studio films have evolved and have become what we now call Spark Sessions, which is a sort of weekly meeting of minds where we get together and discuss these projects and review them together. And when people have time between commercial projects, we develop these things. And this one, for example, called The Lighthouse, we were dabbling with Unreal Engine, the game engine, to see what that could bring to our process, what that could bring to our workflow, how it could influence us, and using it as an opportunity to explore that and see what it can do. We've done the same with Blender as well, and it's obviously a free to use bit of software, and we're really curious to know how it can fit into our pipeline and how we can use it in projects going forward. So it's been amazing to explore that. So it's not just about like exploring technology either. It's also about going right back to those chemistry experiments I was talking about at the top. And this is a work in progress piece from our Spark sessions between Felix and Freddie, called Coffee Run. And it's their two skills combining together, the 3D and the 2D animation, and them working together and having that opportunity and that chance to collaborate when maybe they haven't so much on a commercial project. And we are able to build up these sort of partnerships and connections within our team as well. And with these Spark sessions, ultimately what we're trying to do there is it's a chance to drive the creative direction of the studio. And as I said, it's not one person's vision. It's not down to one person to dictate that. Everyone should get involved in that. Everyone should be a part of that. And it's about creating opportunities for ourselves as well, creating these new avenues of thought, all underpinned by those same thoughts of creativity and that process that we talked about of iterating and exploring, but really just being underpinned by the fact that we want to make the work that we want to make, and with the ambition that that's where we can go as a studio, the blurring of the line between commercial projects and studio projects. And we're really lucky with the projects that we work on. We really enjoy them. And it's always our ambition for people to come to us for the way that we think and the way that we approach projects as well, and how we come at these problems and do that. And I think that's an ambition that we'll always be driving towards and striving towards as well. And that's everything. I hope I didn't rattle through that too fast. There's a lot of slides I wanted to get through, but do let me know if there's any bits you want to go back and discuss further, or anything that's helpful to discuss. But just to say again, thank you guys so much. It's been a blast talking you through the process and everything like that. So thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. It sounds a bit odd to say this, but I have been a fan of the practice for many, many years. And actually, when Con had reached out to us all that time ago to discuss the rebrand, but which, by the way, I am really big fan of, and I think the way you've executed it and made it feel almost as though it's just a very, very natural evolution of who you are as a business is fantastic. So maybe just as you've used the word curious in your process, but interested to hear how the process of working with an external or another creative agency, and given that you're so full of ideas and all of these little sessions that you do to further your own creative kind of ingenuity, how do you how did you find that process, and how much of a I don't want to say sacrifice, but how much of your own intuition had to be pushed and pulled in a direction that you don't normally have to do when you're doing it through commercial work?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think that from the outset it was always sort of our intention to try and get fresh eyes on it. It felt like we were almost too close to it to be able to see the wood for the trees and to understand exactly what it was we were trying to say and what we should be saying. And so, yeah, we teamed up with Regular Practice, who did like an amazing job with the design of that, and then we came in to work on the motion side of things. But it was amazing working with them because we sort of deliberately tried to keep our hands off it. Obviously, as designers and creatives, you want to get stuck in there and change colors and move pixels around. But and we probably did annoy the guys at Regular Practice a little bit as well, because we couldn't help ourselves in getting in and doing that. But I think that desire to have fresh eyes, because ultimately the rebrand was about like expressing who we were. Like the studio was doing this work, but our visual identity didn't connect with that and didn't express that across the website, from the logo, across anything really, any communication. And so to be able to take a step back from it and say, what are the bigger ambitions here? What is it about us that makes us unique in this industry that's full of so many talented studios and even individuals now as well? The industry is becoming so proliferated with amazing work. Is what's our space in that, and being able to own that. And it feels like, yeah, through doing that process, we've been able to get to that point where we can say, yeah, this is who we are. This is what we do.
It's interesting because that brand mark, the original one that you said was quite you're quite precious about, was to me relatively iconic in terms of I always recognized that and associated that with you. So stepping away from kind of an identity that technically comprised of a group of amazing people and a logo into a system that was more representative of the way that which you work feels as though that must have unlocked a huge amount of opportunity for you, because even the way in which you presented that, which by the way was a really great presentation, so thanks for doing that, it was very clear how that identity system empowers, or it kind of allows you to quite naturally talk through the different facets of your business. I had thought, where were you in that photograph of your team? And I had presumed as the creative director, you'd be the dead one on the floor.
Knocked out by a golf ball. I don't know if you could see it. There's a little golf ball in my eye. But yeah, I think yeah, that's that. And as I mentioned in the talk, we love that logo. It's not easy to let go of these things because it does feel quite iconic and feels special to us. But it's not reflective of who we are, and we need it to be. That was the last 14 years. We need to be looking at like what the next 14 years are and beyond that as well. And do we have an identity that can adapt and grow with us as well? We've had a huge amount of change even in just like the last few years. So having a visual language and a brand, really, this is kind of new to us, to have this fully like brand rules and brand guidelines is a new thing for us as well. So being able to put that system in place has been, yeah, really well, for people like me anyway, that's quite exciting.
Any questions before I just end up taking over?
I have it's quite a functional question from the logistical standpoint, especially with like the longer form content. Interested to know how the kind of like team structure for those projects is kind of like made up of, whether you kind of have directors coming in kind of like externally, and like how sound comes into it, illustrators, those kind of things, and then like at what stages of the project those things are kind of like filtered in and introduced.
Yeah, really good question as well. And I think I touched on it a little bit there, but I suppose the way in which we set up for each project will decide at the outset who the creative lead is going to be from the team. Or like all the creative is led by the team in-house. We don't work with kind of freelance directors. We're not like a production company. We're a studio team, and it all comes from the group in the building here. Obviously we kind of bring in specialist skills in terms of like rigging or character animation and things like that as we get into it, but the main drive of the creative comes from the guys in the studio, as you saw. And so what we'll do is we'll establish like who the creative lead is for that project, so we'll sort of almost like match the skills to what the kind of project is going to be. So if it feels like it's going in like a 3D direction, then we'll find a creative lead that has sort of specialisms in those skills. If it's more of a type-led thing, we might pick somebody else. And then once that creative lead has been decided on, we build a team around them. And obviously they work with support from me, but it's ultimately the project is their responsibility, and they get the opportunity there to direct anybody or give thoughts and feedback to people and drive it forwards as well. And yeah, we'll sort of supplement their skills with other people from the team. And then if we need to work with freelancers as well, we've got an amazing kind of network of freelancers all over the world who we love working with too. I suppose that's the main structure of it. That creative, it feels always really important that I talked about that concept, that core concept at the heart of it. That always kind of comes from the internal team and is developed from conversations that we have in the studio.
Given that your team is made up of so many different either interests or I don't know what you'd even describe it as. My knowledge of the terminology with animation is relatively limited, but it's clear that when you started to use your identity to say this person and this person, and they were bringing together two very different aesthetic qualities. Obviously, as a creative director, given that you are responsible for bringing together so many different diverse styles, how does that affect your ability to direct when you aren't necessarily the expert in that particular execution style?
Yeah, I think that sort of speaks to, I guess, me like growing with the studio. I feel like I've learned a lot about different areas, and I feel like personally anyway, I've learned enough to know how to talk about things, but also in some areas there is probably like a blindness and a naivety that allows me to maybe push for things harder that people who are a bit more expert in it might not do. So that, I suppose that's part of it. But then in terms of like how people work together, I think that's pretty simple in that like all the guys in the team are so humble and they do just work together. There's no egos or anything like that. And we don't, even the people who are creative leads on it, it's not about sort of swinging your weight around to get what you want. It's about expressing your vision and bringing people along with you as part of that as well, and making sure that you're listening to people, but then also have a reason for doing things as well. So I think that's definitely a big part of it. And I think we're always like keen to learn. It's why we use those like Spark sessions to dig into new areas and explore new things, and not be afraid to ask about stuff as well. Like it's one of the benefits of being in a studio and in a team, as I'm sure you guys know, that if you don't know something, you can just ask people at the desk next to you and lean on the team as well around you, which yeah, I suppose is a big part of it as well.
Obviously, there's a very obvious question that seems to come up all the time, which is the fact that technology every day is the worst it's ever going to be. Like, because each day, wherever we are right now, is the worst that any technology will ever be, which is obviously really scary.
Yeah.
But through kind of like machine learning and all of these kind of processes, which feels a little bit like it's a cop-out question because it feels like everybody talks about it. But as someone or as a company that really kind of puts concept first, how willing are you as a business to think about introducing kind of artificial intelligence into that process to in some ways either support or actually take a place in the business? How anti or pro it are you, and what's the perspective on the pace in which it's moving at?
Yeah, very hot question. Definitely worth thinking about and worth discussing as well, because it is this incredibly like finely balanced thing, isn't it? The things that AI and technology like that can do for like certain workflows, especially in animation when it can be so laborious and time consuming to do certain things, to see what that can do to speed up the process and free people up to do other things is obviously exciting, but it comes at the cost of putting people out of jobs ultimately, doesn't it? And there's sort of questions around the, like, you know, copyright ultimately, and stealing work to generate certain forms of work like that. I think our sort of view on it, and you touched on it in your question really, is that concept and that creative idea is always going to be at the heart, and ultimately AI is a tool to achieve those things. It could be just another tool in the same way that Photoshop or Cinema 4D is, right? And you use it in that way. I think we're still, to be honest, we haven't really had the opportunity to use it because of it's tricky to see where it fits in, but and also because the team here are so talented, we haven't needed to like dig into that so much. I think there are points where we have looked at it in terms of like style transfer. I don't know how familiar you guys are with this process, like that project I showed for Google Quantum. We used like AI style transfer we took like 3D renders and then did some kind of matte paintings ourselves, and used the AI style transfer to like project onto the 3D, and then we painted over the top, and it became a tool in that process, which is like really fascinating to think about. It just amplifies what you can do. It speeds up what you can do. I know it's something that the team are really like looking into as well, because there is some crazy like text to video developments with Sora and things like that obviously coming along, which, you know, they do look terrifying, but I think as long as creativity and craft like remain at the heart of what we do, is we shouldn't be afraid of that. And the guys have been using like Chat GPT to generate like scripts and things like that, so it's got its benefits, and it's also got, you know, a kind of darker side too as well. And I think as with everything, we're looking at how it can work for us, and not the other way around, I suppose.
It's a good answer.
But
Definitely couldn't have been supplied by ChatGPT anyway.
I'm just reading off it here.
You're actually not there. It's an AI avatar of yourself.
It's a deep fake. It's a deep fake.
We can see who it really is. I don't know if I've got more specific questions. Anybody else got anything they would like to ask?
Saying, because you obviously had the rebrand and you're kind of shifting your kind of overall team, the way you're working. I guess the sort of very simple question was, what's the future of your studio look like? What are you building towards, or what do you think?
Yeah, that's another like very big question, but I think it's really that ambition is to, yeah, as I sort of said at the end there, the idea of making the work we want to make and building towards that, and seeing where that can go, being open to where that can go as well. This combination of skills, this chemistry of skills in the team leads us anywhere within the skills that are in the team, if that makes sense, and the industries that we're working within. But I think that's why it's been so inspiring to start this like in the making talk series as well, is to see like what's going on in other areas, and to think like, what if we had this person in the team and this person in the team, and, you know, that they could combine to make this, and we could go into this space. And that's like incredibly exciting to, you know, at the moment we're a design and animation studio, but, you know, looking forwards to the next like 14 years, I mean, it's about the people and the team who are in the studio, so we could kind of go anywhere really. I don't know if that's a bit of a cop-out answer, but
it works. Do you have any kind of like ambition in the future to get into more kind of like features and like very long form content? I know that's kind of like probably a different kind of pitch, but
yeah,
is that kind of an ambition?
it's certainly something in terms of like, you know, series development and feature development is something that we've talked about. We've currently got a studio film in the process at the moment that's around like 4 minutes, and like, to be honest, that's long enough. I'm not sure if like feature we're quite ready for that yet, but you know, we're always so inspired by that space, by cinema and by film. It's something that's inspired so many people in the team, and if we could end up in that space, I mean, that would be incredible. Of course.
Cool.
But yeah, I did have a question for you guys, and I spoke about it a little bit in terms of like this shift in the industry, this change in the industry and how people are working. And I guess I'm just curious as well as if you guys have kind of felt that, or how, if you've noticed that shift, or what's been going on there from your perspective as well.
So it depends on who you want to answer it. I think my visibility across like the changing state of the commercial creative landscape probably is one avenue for conversation, whereas on the other side, in terms of, is the question more geared towards, have you seen it, is it more also within the way in which we approach design, or is it even broader than that in the way in which clients approach design?
Yeah, I suppose it's within those commercial projects as a place to start. And I know you guys do your kind of experiments and projects outside of that as well. But I would be curious in terms of those commercial projects, how, if that shift for you has been, if it's been there.
I think if we were speaking like really bluntly, I think the change and the pressures economically have been seismic over the last few years. I think the decision of Brexit was possibly, I'm not going to be really rude, but it was fucking stupid. And I think that had a huge effect that most people didn't really think through ahead of making those decisions. I think creatively, there's a lot more kind of a voice in my own mind to want to outside of what I believe is the expected behaviors of a design studio, and that's through its own self-expression, through how we want to be perceived, and actually giving a shit about how we're perceived. I think that's a really important thing. To be able to step aside from what you believe the expectations are of you as a practice, and not necessarily having or trying to compare yourself to other people who, to be perfectly honest with you, you're put into spaces alongside other people you haven't actually necessarily put yourself against. So I think it's about trying to, a little bit like you say about the specialists in your team, I think it's really about taking the time to identify exactly why you exist in the first place, what gets you excited, and then try as much as you possibly can to drive towards fulfilling that. I think when it comes to commercial clients, you know, we could all go out and say, if we were being like, if I'm thinking about my professional and whoever may be listening to this, I think there's always a drive to want to work on projects that are wholly fulfilling. They allow us to find new ways to explore. They feel as though they are an opportunity to work with amazing people. It gives everybody in the team an opportunity to express themselves and be happy. And that isn't all, those things aren't always the case, however much we set out for them to be. And I think that had we not had the same economic pressures as a lot of creative businesses have faced, I can't speak effectively on it outside of London, but I do know through speaking with a lot of other studio owners that the pressures financially have led to you having to make compromises as a business that you really wouldn't want to do as a creative person. And I think that's a big challenge. If you are a creative person running a business, a lot of the time you have to fight against your own intuition to put food on the table, kind of metaphorically, for those around you, but still want to drive for making significant change within the industry that sometimes isn't necessarily 100% where it should be right now. So I don't know if that answers your question. I don't want to throw anything under the bus because I don't want to give any specific examples, but
No, I wasn't, sorry. I wasn't
no,
thinking.
no, it's fine. I think that there's a desire, yes, to want to find more of our authenticity through the way in which we creatively explore. And there is more and more kind of this internal voice that my therapist hears mostly about how do we really push aside the things that drag us backwards, and how do we listen to the voice that's driving us forwards to be the imaginators, the people who want to produce exciting new things that gets everybody in the studio excited. It's not as easy as I would like it to be. And if I could push all of the things of running a business to one side that we all know about, it would be so much easier. But I think that if we really hone into that authenticity, allow the wonderful people you have around you to be able to bring their own expression to the table, then I think you can really kind of stand out to be something really special within your category, rather than just simply conforming to a graphic design studio based in London.
Completely. And I think that's been a huge part of like our rebrand as well, is like you say, finding that that freedom to not compare yourself and find your own voice and your own
Yeah.
that as well. So that's great to hear that. Yeah, you guys are at that point. That's awesome.
Well, that's speaking on my behalf. Obviously, I do my best to try and steer the ship in as good a direction as I possibly can. I'm sure if you were to have one-on-one conversations with everyone here, there's probably a slightly different story to tell. But then I think that's dependent on what the focus of your kind of role is. But I think for me especially, I want to drive this studio forward, not necessarily looking to the left and to the right of me, and work out why we exist. And I'm not really looking to compare ourselves to others to benchmark whether or not I deem that this group of people are successful. I think there's a lot of amazing things that we deliver regardless of what other people within the design industry may or may not think of us. I don't think they're necessarily the things that we should be worried about.
Of course. Yeah, very well said. Very well said.
With that in mind, I'll probably call it there because I don't normally talk for that amount of time at the end of it. And we may end up cutting it out anyway, but I really appreciate your time, and thanks for making such a huge effort on that presentation, because I think it was hugely insightful.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me and for having us as well onto the chat. So yeah, really appreciate it. And you should definitely pop into the studio.
Yeah, I feel a little